Welcome to Gaming Bolt's visual analysis of Darksiders 2 for the PS4 and Xbox One. It's interesting to look back at visual games. Darksiders 2, which came out in 2012, but may as well have been from another era considering all the events that transpired afterwards. When THQ went bankrupt in December 2012, it was assumed that the Darksiders name would flounder in obscurity. Fortunately, Nordic Games acquired the license and expressed interest in making a third Darksiders. Darksiders 2 could be seen as an attempt to familiarize fans with the franchise. However, it could very well serve as the basis for Nordic's work on the next sequel. Gunfire Games, which handled the remaster, is actually composed of several former Visual Games employees. Darksiders 2 essentially saw Gunfire Games rewriting its render in order to implement physically based rendering. Gunfire then went about reworking each texture and surface in the game. How significant are all these changes, and how does it compare to the original game? As it stands, Darksiders 2 maintains its detailed art design. Considering how intricate the art already was, it's amazing that Gunfire actually went back to completely replace assets or simply make pre-existing assets stand out better with improved texture filtering. While the texture work hasn't seen a massive overhaul, you'll still notice a number of subtle improvements over the original. These are apparent in the environments, NPCs and characters, particularly during scripted sequences and cutscenes. Even with its brighter and more colourful art style, Darksiders 2 was fairly gritty, so it's interesting to see the remaster opt for a cleaner look. If you compare Darksiders 2, the original game, the lack of the dark and grimy feel seems even more obvious. Whether Gunfire simply opted for a different colour palette or decided to take a more refined route with the visuals, the difference is certainly there. There isn't too much to say about the shadow quality, but the engine in the base game has also been revamped to have more detailed shadows. If you go back to areas in the original and compare them with Darksiders 2, you'll find shadows filling up previously empty spaces. Again, it's a nice touch and certainly showcases Gunfire's passion and familiarity with the game. When Darksiders 2 released for PCs, the variety of options felt a bit bare bones. Nonetheless, it was well optimized and ran very well across different configurations. The PS4 and Xbox One versions feature a 1080p resolution and marginally unlocked frame rate. Frame rate performance is slightly better on the PS4, but both games have very little by way of performance issues, save for the odd jutter here and there. Darksiders 2 also features filtering in both versions, which results in detailed surfaces even over long distance. A custom SSAO solution brings ambient occlusion and softer shadows to the mix, and draw distance shows significant improvements. Oddly enough, the foliage looks exactly the same as the base game. We are somewhat disappointed that the game doesn't run at a 60 FPS frame rate, especially considering its age. But as it stands, Gunfire Games worked hard to ensure that Darksiders 2 wasn't a simple port, resold for the sake of retaking a bit of extra cash. Despite the criticisms against the gameplay and puzzles, Darksiders 2 has an art style and large open levels that we rarely see in games these days. And it makes it especially tough to judge Darksiders 2. Perhaps the success of this remastered title will result in Darksiders 3. We still stand firm on the lack of 60 FPS being a major issue, especially because the 30 FPS frame rate is unlocked and a few drops can be seen every now and again. As it stands, a game as action-packed and movement-orientated as Darksiders 2 would have benefited greatly from 60 FPS. Nonetheless, Gunfire Games has proven its worth when it comes to developing Darksiders for the Xbox One and PS4. If Darksiders 3 does eventually arrive, we can't wait to see what it brings to the current generation of consoles.
If you like what we're doing, please go ahead and click that subscribe button. See you soon!